around, so give me just a second. Let me see how I'll be able to let you see my screen, but I don't want my little stand to be in the way here. So y'all give me just a second to adjust it. Sorry y'all, give me just one more second. There we go. Okay. Let me just let that right there. See if I can get any closer. Hold on. Okay. Y'all, I should have played with this a little bit more before I started the live. Okay, so I might adjust a little bit here and there as we're doing this. The first thing I want you to notice is that I just have a couple of different ones pulled up on the screen. I wanted to show you that this first row, I want you to notice the shape of them. Do you notice how most of them are just rectangular? They are all very beginner, easy to do edge-to-edge designs. Jenny asked me if I'm cutting in and out. I hope not. I hope that you can hear me very well. If not, is everybody able to hear me good? I hope so. I'm not seeing that anybody's having trouble besides maybe Jenny. She texted me. Okay, so we're going to continue on. But you'll see that these three designs right here are great, very beginner, edge-to-edge designs. They all look rectangular. They don't have ins and outs in them. The next row of designs that you'll see are not rectangular. They have the tops and the bottoms of them are not straight edges. They are curvy. Therefore, it makes them a little bit harder to design when you're doing it edge to edge, okay? So, I just wanted to show you the difference so that if you're a beginner, try to always look for designs that look like this top row, that look basically like a square or a rectangle, because those will be very easy to set up and to get easily set up without having to do a lot of cropping or editing of your actual design, okay? Okay, so let's get started. I am going to clear out these designs. Now, I've already set up a quilt area right here. Right now, my quilt area is set up for 60 by 70, okay? I just did that for an easy size quilt to do, okay? The first thing I'm gonna do is just show you how to set up a very basic, easy edge-to-edge design, okay? So to do that, I'm just gonna go pick my favorite one that I always pick for this, and that's Field of Flowers, okay? I'm gonna move this Field of Flowers where y'all can see it just a little bit better in the viewing. Now with Field of Flowers, the very first thing that I always look at is the size of the design. So I'm going to come over here to the side, okay, and I'm going to see that it's 11.6 by 9 inches tall, okay. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the size of this design, okay. I am changing the size of this design because I like to make my designs as big as I can according to the throat space of my machine. So I know you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to repeat myself. You always take your throat space and minus 6 inches from that, and that is a safe height that you can set a design even if you're doing a king size quilt. So if you have a 20-inch machine, the safe size of a height of a design would be 14 inches. So I'm going to change the size of this design to 14 inches in height. To do that, I'm going to go to the Modify tab, because Modify means I'm going to make a change. And then I'm going to go to the Resize feature, and I'm going to come over here to the sidebar, and I'm going to make sure that my proportions are locked. I'm going to make sure that height is selected. And do remember, anytime that we are making changes and we are selecting things, that if they are green, that means that they are selected. Okay, so if they are already green, I do not have to select them to do that function. So since lock and height are already selected for me, the only thing left to do is for me to punch into the little number pad and change that to 14. Okay, now, since I have changed the size of the design, I am going to come over here to this side of my screen, and I am going to baseline that because I want it to remember this size of the design, not the original that it came up as on my screen, okay? So we've baselined this size change of our design. Now the very next step that I will do is go to the repeat tab, because I want to make as many repeats as I can to make this an edge to edge to fill in my pink box or my quilt, okay? So the first thing I always do is I always come over here to the sidebar and I select the option of fill. When you select fill, it will fill in as many repeats as it can without going outside your pink box, okay? Now, it will sometimes fit perfectly and you're like, oh yay, this is awesome, but most of the time it will not. I'm going to show you that on this particular design there are a few things that you immediately can notice that need to have a little bit of help. First of all, it doesn't reach the outside edges of my pink area, okay? Blurry screen, okay, I'm sorry, we'll do the best we can. I do have to move the screen a little bit, so I'll do the best I can, Brenda. I'll do my very best. Now, the next thing that I see is that there is a distinct line in between my rows, and that is a gap. So I'm going to fix that gap. That gap is considered a vertical gap. So I'm going to come over here to the sidebar and select vertical. And then on the gap, I'm going to hit the minus sign until I like the gap in between my rows. Now, without having to move my screen so that you can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to go over to the toolbar and select zoom, and I'm going to zoom in to where the two rows meet so I can see the spacing and see if it looks good. And I can see that this is a spacing right here where the two rows are meeting, and I'm happy with that. So I'm going to leave it like I have it now because I'm very happy with that spacing. You can't tell the spacing here is any different than it is anywhere else in the design, okay? So I'm going to hit that refresh button at the bottom of my screen because I'm happy with that. Okay, yes, I know you can't see the entire screen, but I'm doing the best that I can. I know you can see my thing, but I've got it on a stand, so it's very hard to get it perfect, and I don't want to sit here and play with it the whole class. So I'm moving my screen as I can to let you see everything that you need to see as I'm pressing it. Okay. So the next thing that I'm going to do is concentrate on filling in the edges right here. Now, you can do a couple of different things. This is what I'm going to do on this particular one. On this design, because there's no circles in it, I'm going to select the stretch feature. Now, you didn't see a big change because right now it's vertically, and vertically this design was almost completely full. But horizontally, when I go and select stretch, you're going to see a big difference. You'll see that it really stretched out to the edges of my pink lines, okay? Now, in my opinion, this still looks very, very good, and I'm happy with it. So I am going to now baseline this design, which is on my toolbar on the left-hand side of my screen, okay? And then I'm going to do what I always do. And I'm only going to do this part on this one particular one because I want to really show y'all a lot of different ways to do edge to edge. But this goes without saying, every time you create an edge-to-edge design, we are always, always, always going to save this before we ever put a stitch in our design, okay? Okay, so I am going to go to File, Save, Selected, okay? And then I am going to go and scroll down to a folder that I've created called Quilt. And I'm going to name this Facebook Live. Now, I'm not going to name it Facebook Live. That takes too long. I'm just going to name it Face because it doesn't really matter. And hit Save. And now that design is saved in case anything were to happen and I needed to go back and pull this back up and start again and resume this quilt. Okay? So this is how, on this particular design of Field of Flowers, I would have set this up. Now, could I have done different things to set this up on this exact design? Absolutely, there is. That's why I'm doing this class, to show you all kinds of different ways to set stuff up, okay? So now what I'm going to do so that we can go on to another one is I'm just going to go to Close and Selected. That way it only closes out my design but not my area, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do clamshells, which is when we use the wrap feature when we're doing an offset design. So I'm going to go to File, Design, and Open, and I'm going to go find my clamshells, which is in continuous lines. And your designs are always in alphabetical order, so I can quickly go and just find my C's, which is right here. There's clamshells, and I'm going to select Open. Okay. Now the clamshell's super small, and I can come over here to the side screen, and I can see that it's 3 inches in width and 1.5 inches tall. I'm not happy with that height, so I am going to change it. So I'm going to go to Modify, Resize, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to make sure my proportions are locked, and based on the height, I'm going to change that clamshell to 3 inches tall. Okay. Now, because I did change the size of it, I'm going to come over here and baseline that size change. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is go to the Repeat tab, and then I'm going to come over here to my right sidebar, and I'm going to select Fill. Okay. When you select Fill, it does not look like it normally would if you were doing clamshells on a quilt. Okay. Let me tell you what I'm going to do first. The first thing I'm going to do, even though it has filled very nicely inside my quilt, I'm going to add more repeats horizontally and vertically. Okay. Now, again, my reasoning behind this is because I know what's going to happen if I don't. So when I'm doing offset stuff, I always add way more than what I need in repeats. Okay. So there we go. That's what it looks like right now. Okay. It still is not right, but to get it to where we can do offsets, I'm going to now look over here, and where we are at basics, I'm now going to select wrap. Okay. When I select wrap, I now can come over here to the side screen again, and I can come to horizontal. I can come down here to where it says row, and if you'll notice, there's this little icon that says half. If I select the half icon, it automatically will take those rows, and every other row, take half of it and move it over. Okay, so it offsets it by half of the design, which is perfect for clamshells. So now this looks like clamshells really would look like on a quilt. But I'm not done. Okay, the next thing that I personally always do is right here, I baseline this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Modify tab, and this is where everything is personal preference. Okay, I personally am going to go to the Align feature right here. Okay, now let me talk to you about Align, because I've really not touched on that very much. Where most of the time when we are repositioning our quilt, we're repositioning our quilt pattern to our crosshair. Okay, but when we are using the Align feature, we are aligning it to the area that we've created. Okay, so I want the top of that clamshell to be at the top of my quilt and not cut off. This is personal preference again. So I am going to, on the Align, come over here to the sidebar, and vertically I'm going to select top. Okay, and what that did was it took that top part of the clamshells and it moved it down to my pink line. Now, if I was really OCD, I would know that that still is not exactly where I want it, because I know that I personally set my quilt area to where it's outside the top edge of my quilt and to the top outside edges left and right of my quilt. So I personally would then come to reposition, and I would come over here and I would actually nudge it down just a little bit. Okay, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And this is barely nudging it, okay, until I could look and notice by zooming in that it is below that pink area now. That way, when I go to actually quilt it, I know it's probably going to actually land inside the top part of my quilt. Now, that's just me being picky, okay? You do not have to do that, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all those, I'm going to get rid of all those stitches on the outside edges of my quilt, because I don't need those. So I'm going to go, and normally I would tell you to baseline, but baseline is grayed out, which means there's no need right now for me to baseline, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to crop, and then I'm going to look over on my sidebar, and I'm going to tell it to crop all the stitches outside and the edges, okay? And when I do that, now my quilt looks nice and neat, exactly how I would like it, okay? Now I will go over here and baseline it, and then of course I would then save this file, save, selected, go put it in my folder and keep it there for in case I needed to retrieve this again while I'm using it, okay? So that is how you would do a traditional offset design using the wrap feature. Now I'm going to use the wrap feature for other things today too. We're really going to play with the wrap feature today. But that is just the traditional way of using the wrap feature, okay? Pretty cool so far. I hope you're learning something. Now, once again, of course, there are more than one ways to do this. This again is just the way my brain is thinking about doing it with the examples that I'm giving you, okay? So I'm going to go to File, Close, Selected, so that it doesn't close out my area. It only closes out my design. And I'm going to go pick up a design that I actually quilted last week and didn't like the way it looked after I set it up, so I had to do some tweaking to it, okay? Now, it's not a built-in design. It's one that I purchased. Don't ask me where I purchased it. I purchased it so long ago, I can't remember where I purchased it from. I would tell you if I were a guessing person, it was probably Urban Elements, but I really don't remember. I just went into the wrong folder for it. Hold on. Let me see if it's still in my history right here. Nope. Okay. Okay, now I'm in the right folder. Okay, so I'm going to go find a design that's called Pickup Sticks. There it is. Okay. Now, I know this looks probably pretty ugly, but it's actually the background picture for this class today. It actually really quilted out very nicely on the quilt I quilted it on, and it fit it perfectly. But this is what it looks like up close. I just wanted to give you an up close look of it. Now, looking over at the size of the design, it is 11 inches wide and 10.22 inches tall. So I know right now that I'm automatically going to go and resize this real quickly. So I'm going to make sure the proportions are locked and the height, and I'm going to click in my box and I'm going to change that height to 14 inches. Okay. And then again, because I have changed that, I'm going to come over here and baseline that size. Okay. Okay. Now, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and do what I always do, go to repeat, I'm on basic, and I'm going to select the fill option right here on the side. Okay. Now, when you do that, I want to talk to you about what it looks like. First of all, you can see each square of each one of the repeats, and I do not like that. And sometimes some designs look like that. Let me talk about that for just a second. Number one, unless you're doing this on a white piece of fabric or a solid piece of fabric, you're truly not going to notice these divisions on a quilt that has lots of busy fabric on it. So don't let that discourage you using one of these designs that looks like this, okay? Now, what I will tell you is I'm still going to make it look a little bit better than that, okay? What I don't like is that, again, the distinction between the rows. That still bothers me a whole lot, okay? But the first thing I'm going to do is just add a couple of more repeats, okay, vertically and horizontally, and I'm going to add more than it needs, okay? So I've added more than it needs because I'm going to be using the wrap feature, and I always like to add more when I'm going to use the wrap feature. Now, I'm not going to fix this spacing yet because I want to fix that when I'm using the wrap feature. I do not like, if I were to right now try to fix the gap, these little sticks are going to run into each other super quickly. But if I could like nudge this design a little bit, I might be able to get it a little bit closer together, okay? So I'm going to zoom back out so that you can see it all. And I'm going to go to the wrap feature, okay? And I'm going to select horizontal over here. And instead of hitting the half, I'm going to select this little arrow right here on the rows. And as I'm selecting it, it moves the rows side, where it's just offsetting them a little bit, not necessarily half. And when I get it to where I think I can nest it a little bit better, hold on, let me get it right where I want to get it, right here. Yeah. Okay, so now I've moved it a little bit. I'm going to zoom in to where the two rows are meeting, okay? And then I'm going to go back to basic on my screen. So I went back to basic, and I'm going to come over here to vertical, and I'm going to start closing in that gap a little bit more. Okay, I have to be careful because it's going to get too close right here, but I'm just trying to tweak it a little bit. Oh, y'all, I don't like it. I'm going to go back. I don't like it. It's almost identical still to the way it was originally. So I'm going to go back to wrap, and I'm going to go back to horizontal, and I'm going to move this some more. There. I want to move it there. No, I'm going to move it a little bit more. There. Okay. Now I want to zoom in some. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to basic. Okay. And now that I'm back on basic, I'm going to come and now play with this gap again. And let me see. Did I run through the lines? Oh, I'm doing it the wrong way, y'all. Good grief, Kelly. You're going to just confuse these people instead of help them. Okay, here we go. Do you see how they're getting closer together? Now, when I come back and I hit refresh, you're not going to see that distinction between the rows anymore. And you're not going to see that distinction from block to block as well anymore because they're offset now. So they're more scrambled up. And you can see, if you want to look at this big rectangle right here, you can see that it's no longer on top of itself like it would be if we wouldn't have used the wrap feature. It's offset just a little bit. Therefore, it gives a little variation, and it would make it easier for us to use and nest our rows top to bottom to each other. I hope this is making sense. Okay. I'm going to refresh this screen real quick. Okay. So I'm happy with the way this looks right now. You know what? Just for viewing purposes, to help y'all see this a little better, I'm going to take the jumps off so we don't see those little purple lines going from row to row. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to go and baseline my design. Okay. And then I'm going to go to modify, and I'm going to go to crop. And again, I'm going to go select outside and edges. Okay. Super happy with that. I would baseline it again. Baseline's your best friend. And I would be happy with that. And I would save this right now, and then I would go to town quilting it. Okay, so there's another example of a easy design that I tweaked that I probably would not have used if I could not have tweaked it like this and played with it. I would have not been happy with it and would have picked out a different design. But this design is a really cool design. Again, it's called Pick Up Sticks, but I don't remember where I purchased it from. Okay, so I'm going to close that design out. And let's go do something that has circles in it. And again, I'm going to use a design that I've purchased. It's called Bubble Meander, and I can tell you where I purchased it at. I remember. It was designed by Vickie, V-I-C-K-I-E. She's got some great, most of her designs are the square shaped. So almost all of them are very beginner and easy to work with, okay? Again, that was designed by Vickie, V-I-C-K-I-E. This design, just so I don't have to move my screen for y'all, is 12 by 12. I'm actually gonna leave it the size that it is and not change it. I like this design at that size. I've used this design 100 gazillion times, and it's just, this is the right proportion for it, and I just like it, so I'm gonna leave it as is. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to repeat, And I'm going to come over here to the right sidebar and I'm going to select that fill again, okay? Now, it did not fill, of course, enough, so I'm going to add some repeats to it, horizontally and vertically, okay? And let's look at our screen now, okay? Now, you can see that it's a little bit outside the edges, but left and right, it's almost perfect, okay? What I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to, bear with me, I'm going to add one more repeat vertically and horizontally, okay? I'm a girl that just likes to have more than have just enough, especially with circles, okay? With circles, we can never like stretch it, use a stretch feature, because if you use the stretch feature with circles, they turn into eggs or ovals and they don't say circles anymore. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with designs that have circles in it, okay? So now that I've added a few extra repeats, I'm actually going to go to the Modify tab, and I'm going to go to use that Align feature again. And I'm going to come over here to this right sidebar, and I'm horizontally going to align everything to the left side of the area and then vertically to the top side of the area. So now this is what my screen looks like. Now, this is a Kelley preference. This is not there's a reason why you should do it this way. I personally like my top of my quilt where I'm starting at, and the left side where we always have each row start at. I like those edges to be nice and clean, and like, if I can help it, not have any cropping done on those edges. So I like to align my stuff this way, okay? I don't know why, this is just the way I do it, okay? So right now, I'm going to baseline this, because baseline is not grayed out, and I'm about to use the crop feature, okay? So now I'm just going to get rid of all the rest of these stitches right here. I'm going to go to crop, and then I'm going to go to outside and edges again, okay? And there is my design. I would baseline it, of course, again, and then I would save this. Now, you do need to always use crop when you're doing circle designs. Unless it fits perfectly into your space with just doing repeats, you do not want to use the stretch feature. I'm just repeating that. Do not use the stretch feature when you have circles in your design. It will not keep them circles any longer, okay? So, again, this was Bubble Meander by Designs by Vicki, okay? This goes great on children quilts. It goes great on almost all quilts. Okay, I'm going to close this out real quick. Close selected. And now we're going to do a design that is a little bit more advanced, okay? It's a design that I used to use a whole lot. I do remember where I purchased it also. It was Urban Elements. It has circles in it and feathers in it, and I'll just talk to you about it after I pull it up. I love this design. Now, remember that I did grow up in Mississippi, so that is where I went to school at, and I did not get a college degree, just letting y'all know that. So I don't know if I pronounced this right, but that's Aphrodite, I think. Aphrodite Grande. There's two different sizes of it. Y'all can laugh right now if y'all want to. I don't know if I pronounced that right. But anyway, this is one of my favorite designs. Now, here's the kicker. As soon as I bought this design, the first time I used it, I had a motor error. Excuse me, sorry y'all. I had a motor error because I got so excited about this design that I stupidly did not even check to see what the size of the design was. And the height of this design originally is 15 inches, which is too big for any of my throat spaces that I had on any of my machines. So I designed it all and saved it, whoopee, yay, but then I still had a motor error because I made my design too big, okay? So when you are purchasing designs, learn from me to always, before you do anything with that design, check the height to see if you need to adjust the size of it before you begin to use it, okay? Okay, so here we go. The first thing I'm going to do is change the size of this design. Now, this is one of those that does like this, so it's not a rectangle. It is going to be a little bit different with setting this one up, okay? So I'm going to go to Modify and Resize. I'm going to lock my proportions over here. And according to the height, I'm going to change this 15 inches to 14 inches, okay? And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to baseline that change. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go to the repeat tab. I am going to add lots of repeats. First, I'll select fill, like I always do, okay? I'm going to fix that gap before I add any more repeats. That's a huge, huge gap that we do not want, okay? So I'm going to come over here to vertically, and I'm just going to hit this minus sign until that gap gets a little bit better. Okay, I'm just holding it down. This design quilts out so, so pretty. I'm going to challenge you with this. If y'all go and purchase this design, I've done this a couple of times with this design on different quilts. I actually took it and you can only do this with certain quilts though. So I had a couple of different quilts that had like lots of different beautiful bright colors in it. So I took a spool of thread, like 7 different spools of thread. All of them were different colors that were in the quilt, and I kind of went from brightest to lightest, and I did each one of these rows a different color of thread. And because they intertwine like this, it was kind of like an umber effect, and it was so cool because you could see that I had used different colors of threads, but it kind of was because the fabrics were busy and the pattern waves in and out of itself. You really, it still was kind of camouflaged to where the rows were, even though they were different colors of thread. Really cool effect. It would even be a cool effect to do on a solid color of fabric. So think about that when you go and buy a design that's like this. Think about maybe doing each row a different color of thread intentionally to see the look that you get with a quilt. It's really cool. Okay, so I'm happy with this gap. I'm going to close it in a little bit more. Of course, I always zoom in and I see how my polka dots are looking with meeting each other. And if I want to close it in a little bit more, I can. Because you want it to be as, you know, you want these polka dots to look like they're touching both feathers almost, but not quite. Okay, so I'm liking the look of that. Now I need to add a lot more rows. So I'm going to add a couple of more rows vertically and a couple more rows horizontally. Okay, so that's what it looks like right now. I'm going to go ahead and baseline this. Okay, now on this, we cannot come up here to modify and align. If I were to do what I like to do with other ones, I'm going to have this huge gap on the top. Okay, and we don't want that. So you don't use align with a design like this. With a design like this, you're going to leave it just like it is, and you're just going to crop out the stitches. Okay, so I would go to crop, outside, and edges. Okay, and then I would save this. But again, you've got to be careful when you do a design like this, because let me tell you something. You're only going to be able to advance your quilt on your frame like half of a row each time, because your rows go up and down. So you're going to see a lot of the row above it still in your quilting area, because look at how far up this row goes, and this row right here is still really low. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like this. Okay, so you've just got to be careful. Make sure that you have allotted yourself enough throat space when you're advancing your quilt, that you still can be able to get that whole row quilted in there. So this might be one of those times where if you have a 20-inch machine, you might not do 14 inches. You might go down to 12 inches just to give yourself a little bit of security with advancing your quilt, because it is a little bit more trickier. You have less forgiveness and grace with advancing your quilt with a design that moves like this. Okay? Okay. So let me look at my list here. Okay, so far, are there questions? I should have been asking this in between each one. I didn't think. I was just so excited to show y'all all of this. So far, are there any questions about the edge to edges that I've showed y'all, or any of the steps that I took, or why did I take them, besides me telling you it's just the way I want to do it? If there aren't, I'm going to show you something kind of cool and neat that I played with this app. Can we view this later as well? Absolutely, Brenda. All of our lives are recorded, and then Jeannie puts them in the guide section, and they're all in guide number 29. If you are on a cell phone, you'll have to look at the 3 dashes at the top left corner of your cell phone if you've got an iPhone, and click on that to find the guides. But if you're on a desktop computer, you'll be able to easily find the guides. Okay, name of the last design. Okay, are you asking me that because you want to hear me say it again because I probably butchered it? I don't know, but it's Aphrodite Grande, and I got it at Urban Elements. Okay, so I'm going to see if anybody else has a question before I jump to the next thing. I'm not seeing anything so far. I'm sure I probably missed something because I was so excited. Oh, Joan asked, you tapped edges twice. Oh, I did? I might have accidentally done that, Joan. I don't know. Oh, hey, Luann, if you're still on here. Okay, so let's do something different now. Close selected. I want to show y'all something that I played with a little bit earlier today. So I'm going to come on here and I'm going to go to our continuous lines folder. Whoops. Kelley. I'm fat fingering everything today. Okay. And I'm going to pick out, y'all might have seen this somewhere else before. I don't know if you have, but let me pretend like you haven't and let me woo you for just a second. I'm going to pick out some of these different trucks. Okay. Now let me move them. Whoops. I've got zoom selected instead of select. There we go. Whoops. Kelley. It's not doing what I want it to do right now. I hope I haven't just messed this up and have to oh, thank you. Okay, so watch this, okay? You cannot do this just with anything, okay? I am going to take these three and I'm going to line them up to where their starts and stop points are on the same exact X and Y axis, okay? So I'm going to move this fire truck. Oh, not both of them. I just want to do one of you. And I'm going to move it over here to the dump truck. I'm going to have to zoom in, okay? I'm going to move it. And now I'm going to start zooming in to where the start and stop is, okay? Now, I'm concentrating on this truck. I'm going to go to modify and reposition. And just so that I don't have to move my screen to where I make y'all nauseous or anything, I'm going to be using the nudge feature. And I just want you to watch what happens. So I'm going to start nudging my design closer to the end point of the other design. Okay. I'm just nudging it 0.01 spaces at a time. Okay. And now I've got it touching it. Okay. I'm going to refresh my screen. So I've got those two touching each other. Okay. Now I'm going to tell it to select none again. And I'm going to select this cement truck. If it will let me, select. Do y'all see all the beginner stuff mistakes I'm making? I was on Zoom, so that's why it wasn't working. I have to have select selected to be able to select something. Duh. Okay. I'm going to move it just a little bit closer. And now I'm going to select zoom and I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to nudge this one also. Now, if I did good, and I deselect all of them, okay, and then I select them one at a time, select 1, 2, 3. Do you see now how I only have one start point and one end point? It just joined all these together as one design, okay, as a continuous line design. So what I'm going to do right now is baseline that. Is this not cool? This is so cool. I wish I could hear y'all like cheering right now. I know y'all all are. And now I'm going to go to the repeat tab and watch this, y'all. Horizontally, I'm going to add another repeat, and vertically, I'm going to add a couple of repeats. Okay? Now, vertically, I want to zoom in and show you something. Vertically right now, these trucks are touching the dirt below, above it, and I don't like that. I want a little bit of a gap there. So vertically, I'm going to give it a gap right now, and I'm going to give it a little bit of spacing right there. Okay, y'all see that? Looking good so far, right? So what I don't like is the trucks all on top of each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that wrap feature, and I'm going to go to horizontal, and I'm going to go to that rows and select half, and look what it just did. It moved them to where the dump trucks are in between each other now. So I'm going to go to modify and align, and I'm going to tell it to center everything. Okay? Now, I just did that so I could get it all in the quilt area. What I would do now is, and I that was an extra step I didn't have to take. I'm going to vertically tell it to line up from the top because I don't want the first row of my quilt to have a cut-off truck. And I'm noticing by doing that it almost is perfect in my quilt area. If I were to nudge it down just a little bit more, I might not get the tip tops of these trucks at the bottom of my quilt like they are right now. Oops, undo. I'm going to zoom in and show you what I'm talking about. So right down here, you can see where it's going to have a little bit of the tops of these trucks if I were to leave it like it is, okay? So if I wanted to, what I could do right now is I could go to reposition, and again, I could use that nudge feature and just nudge my design down just a little bit, okay? Until it's not going to show these trucks down here in the quilt area itself, which is great. Okay, so, and it's still not got too much of a gap up at the top, which again, I set my area to where it's outside my quilt anyway, so I've already got fudge room. So I'm not going to worry about it cutting off the sides of my quilt. It's going to have to because I've got my trucks offset anyway. So I really like the look of this. I like the spacing in between my rows. I like how my trucks are going to start off at the top with a full truck. I love everything about this, so I'm going to baseline it. And look what happened. Something funky happened. Things like this do sometimes happen when you're doing crazy, weird things, okay? This happened to me earlier when I was setting this up. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to undo our baseline, okay? And we're going to go back to repeats, and we're going to add a couple of more repeats, okay? Sometimes when you add more repeats, you just have to trick this design. Look, it even messed up again. Sometimes when things like this happen, you have to just do different things to trick it. Here is my I'm not an engineer, best explanation I can give you answer is the way they program this program to create these designs as we're kind of semi-digitizing them ourselves. It sometimes does not like the way we input or do things. Therefore, we can still get it done. We've just got to trick it and do it a different way so that it will accept it, okay? So right now, I'm going to go back to modify and see if it will now let me crop and not mess up. And it did. So I'm going to crop the outside and the edges. And look, I have just created a brand new edge-to-edge design with built-in designs that are built into my Pro Stitcher program from scratch. Is that not the coolest thing ever? I mean, to me, this just is so cool to be able to do this. I mean, it's just one more new thing that we don't ever utilize on our Pro Stitcher that we can do. Is that cool? Okay, that was my like, ooh-ha, let me show you something moment, okay? So, anyway, let me put the camera back this way and not where it's so, okay, not where it's so close to me, okay. So I hope today helped you. If you have any questions, please ask now. Y'all were able to watch this without getting too yucky feeling. But are there any questions about today's live? Thank you, Joan. You make my day. If there are no questions, then we are going to say adios. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think Jenny's going to do next week's live, and it's going to be for everybody, not just Pro Stitcher users. Jenny, am I right? Aren't you going to do next week? I think you are. So stay tuned to see what she posts about next week. It'll be fun. Thank y'all so much for joining us today. I hope y'all have a great rest of your week. I can't even talk. And we will catch y'all next week. Thanks. Bye.